I'm Zenobia, 29 years old, and I thought Christmas was supposed to bring families together. I thought the people who raised you were supposed to love you no matter what. But that night, sitting at my mother's dinner table, surrounded by twinkling lights and the smell of roasted turkey, I learned that sometimes the cruelest words come from the mouth of the person who's supposed to protect you. When my mom screamed those words at me, I didn't know that the bus ride to my grandmother's house would uncover a truth that had been hidden for 17 years. Before we dive in, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe because what I discovered that night will show you that sometimes walking away is the only way to find yourself. Growing up, I always felt like the odd one out in my family. There were 3 of us kids. My older brother Dylan is 34 now, a successful lawyer who seemed to glide through life with the kind of confidence that only comes from knowing you're loved unconditionally. My sister Marissa, 32, became a doctor. She had this way of commanding a room, of making people listen. And then there was me, the youngest, the one who became an elementary school teacher, a choice that somehow disappointed everyone except the one person who truly mattered. My father died when I was 12. It was a car accident on a rainy Tuesday night. One moment he was there kissing my forehead before heading to work, and the next police officers were standing at our door with their hats in their hands. I remember my mother's scream. It was the kind of sound that echoes in your bones, the kind you never forget. But what I remember more is what came after. In the weeks and months following his death, something shifted in our house. My mother, Margaret, who was 61, now became someone I barely recognized. She poured all her attention into Dylan and Marissa, pushing them toward success, celebrating every achievement, every accolade. But with me, there was only silence. Cold, cutting silence. I spent my teenage years wondering what I'd done wrong. Why didn't she hug me the way she hugged them? Why didn't my accomplishments matter? When I made honor roll, she nodded. When Dylan made honor roll, she threw a party. When I won the school writing contest, she said that's nice. When Marissa won a science fair, she invited the whole neighborhood to celebrate. The pattern was so clear, so consistent, that I started to believe what the silence was telling me. That I wasn't enough. That I didn't matter. That I was somehow less than. But there was one person who never made me feel that way. My grandmother, Ruth. She was 85 now, a tiny woman with silver hair and the warmest smile I'd ever seen. Grandma Ruth lived alone in a small house about 15 miles away in a quiet neighborhood where everyone knew everyone. She'd been a teacher herself back in the day, and when I told her I wanted to teach, her eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "You'll be wonderful," she said. "You have your father's heart, kind and patient and full of love." Those words meant everything to me because they were words my mother never said. I visited Grandma Ruth almost every weekend. We'd bake together, cook the old family recipes, sit on her porch swing, and talk about everything and nothing. She had this way of making me feel seen, of making me feel like I mattered. But my mother hated it. Every time I mentioned going to see Grandma, her face would tighten. She'd find reasons why I shouldn't go. "There's too much traffic. The weather's bad. You have things to do here." I never understood why. Grandma Ruth was her mother-in-law, my father's mother. Shouldn't she want us to stay connected? But I learned not to ask questions. In our house, questions only led to more silence. This year, I'd been hoping things would be different. It was Christmas after all. The season of miracles, of family, of second chances. I'd spent 3 months saving up to buy my mother the perfect gift. A beautiful cashmere scarf that cost more than I could afford on my teacher's salary. I bought a rare first edition book for Dylan and expensive French perfume for Marissa. I baked gingerbread cookies from Grandma Ruth's recipe, the ones my father used to love. I decorated them with care, each one a tiny work of art. I wanted so badly to be part of the family, to feel like I belonged. I wanted my mother to look at me the way she looked at them. Just once. On the morning of December 24th, I arrived at my mother's house before dawn. The streets were still dark, Christmas lights blinking on porches up and down the block. I let myself in with my key and started helping with the cooking. My mother was already in the kitchen, her face set in that expression I knew so well. Distant. Unreachable. She handed me tasks without looking at me. Peel these potatoes, chop those vegetables, set the table. I did everything she asked, trying to make conversation, trying to break through that wall between us. I told her about my students, about the little boy with autism who'd finally read his first full sentence. About the girl who'd been struggling with math but just had her breakthrough moment. I thought she'd care. Teaching was important work, wasn't it? But she just nodded her attention elsewhere. Dylan and Marissa arrived late as they always did. But when they walked through the door, my mother's whole face transformed. She rushed to greet them, hugging them tight, exclaiming over Marissa's new coat and Dylan's watch. They were her sun and moon, and I was just a shadow in the corner trying not to take up too much space. We gathered in the dining room as the sun set the table laden with food I'd helped prepare. The Christmas tree in the corner sparkled with lights, casting a warm glow over everything. For just a moment, looking at that tree, I let myself hope. Maybe this year would be different. Maybe this year she'd see me. Dinner started the way it always did. My mother sat at the head of the table, Dylan and Marissa on either side of her like sentinels. I was at the far end, so far away I could barely hear their conversation. The food was beautiful. Golden roasted turkey, creamy mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce that caught the light like rubies. Everything looked perfect. But perfect is just a word, and words don't fill the emptiness inside you when you're sitting with your family and feeling completely alone. My mother spent the first 20 minutes praising Dylan. He'd just won a huge case, some corporate lawsuit that I didn't fully understand. She went on and on about his brilliance, his dedication, how proud she was. Dylan smiled that confident smile of his, accepting the praise like it was his due. Then she turned to Marissa, gushing about the medical program she'd joined, some prestigious research initiative. Marissa described it in detail, her voice animated, and my mother hung on every word. They were having a conversation, a real one, and I was invisible. I tried to join in. When there was a lull, I mentioned my student with autism again, how he'd been working so hard, how moved I was to see his progress. My mother gave me a perfunctory nod, the kind you give a stranger who's told you about their day. Dylan barely glanced up from his plate. But then he said something that made my chest tighten. "Teaching is nice, but when are you going to get a real career?" The words hung in the air like smoke. Marissa laughed, actually laughed. She's happy with her little classroom. Not everyone can be ambitious. I felt my face flush. I wanted to defend myself, to explain that teaching wasn't just a job, it was a calling. That every child I helped learn to read, every kid I gave confidence to, mattered more than any corporate lawsuit or medical research. But I knew they wouldn't understand. So I swallowed the words along with my food and told myself to keep quiet. Don't let them see how much it hurts. Don't give them that power. Then came the gift exchange. My mother stood up, her face glowing with excitement. She handed Dylan a small box, and when he opened it, I heard him gasp. It was a Rolex watch, the kind that costs $15,000. Marissa got an envelope, and inside were first-class tickets to Europe for 2 weeks. Premium hotels, guided tours, the works. They both thanked her profusely, hugging her, telling her she was too generous. And then my mother turned to me. She handed me a Christmas card, the kind you buy at the drugstore. Inside was $50 in cash. She said, "I know you don't need much." Those words landed like a slap. I stared at the $50 bill, trying to process what had just happened. $15,000 for Dylan, thousands more for Marissa's trip, $50 for me. And worse than the money was what it represented. You don't matter. You're not worth the investment. I forced myself to smile, to say thank you, but inside I was crumbling. When it was my turn to give gifts, I pulled out the cashmere scarf I'd bought for my mother. She unwrapped it slowly, barely glancing at the soft fabric. "Oh, it's nice. You shouldn't have spent money you don't have." Dylan and Marissa didn't even open their gifts. They set them aside on the table like they were junk mail already forgotten. I'd spent months choosing those gifts, months saving, and they couldn't even pretend to care. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air thicker. I needed to change the subject to think about something good. So I said Grandma Ruth asked if we could visit her tomorrow. The reaction was immediate. My mother's face went pale, then red. Her jaw clenched. "We're not going there," she said, her voice sharp as broken glass. I blinked, confused. "But Mom, she's 85. She's all alone on Christmas." My mother's eyes narrowed. "She made her choices. We made ours." I didn't understand. What choices? What had Grandma Ruth done that was so terrible? I looked at Dylan and Marissa hoping for support, but they were studiously avoiding my gaze. The silence stretched out uncomfortable and heavy. I felt something shift inside me, then a small crack in the dam I'd built to hold back years of hurt. Why did my family hate the one person who'd always loved me? What was I missing? I couldn't let it go. Maybe it was the wine I'd had with dinner, or maybe it was just 17 years of being ignored finally catching up with me. But I heard myself saying Grandma loves us. She shouldn't be alone. My mother's hand slammed down on the table, making the silverware jump. "Don't bring her up at my table." Her voice was ice and fire all at once. Dylan leaned forward, his lawyer voice activated. "Zenobia, drop it. Mom knows what's best." I felt anger rising in my throat, hot and bitter. What's best? Or what's easiest? That's when my mother started listing my failures. It was like she'd been keeping a mental tally for years, just waiting for the right moment to unload. "You're 29 and still renting that tiny apartment. You make $35,000 a year. That's nothing. You have no husband, no prospects. You waste your time with other people's children instead of making something of yourself." Each sentence was a knife carefully aimed and expertly thrown. I sat there bleeding from wounds no one else could see. I tried to fight back. I love my job. I help kids learn. That matters. But my mother just laughed a sound with no humor in it. "Help. You're just babysitting. Anyone can do that." Marissa nodded along. "Mom's right. You could have gone to medical school, law school." "But you chose this." Dylan added his voice to the chorus. "We're just trying to help you see reality, sis." Reality? What reality? The one where I was worthless unless I made 6 figures? The one where teaching children to read was somehow less important than winning corporate lawsuits? I felt something breaking inside me, something that had been cracked for years finally giving way. And then I remembered something. I remembered being 13 a year after my father died, asking my mother why she didn't hug me like she hugged Dylan and Marissa. I remembered her answer cold and clear. Because they earned it. Earned it. Like love was something you had to qualify for. Like a child's worth was measured in achievements and accolades. I'd spent 17 years trying to earn something that should have been freely given. And sitting there at that Christmas table surrounded by twinkling lights and the smell of turkey gone cold, I finally understood. I was never going to be enough for her. Not because I was lacking, but because she'd decided long ago that I didn't deserve her love. The realization should have destroyed me. Instead, it made me brave. I stood up my chair, scraping against the floor. "I'm going to visit Grandma tomorrow. Anyone want to come?" The silence was deafening. My mother's face went through several emotions quickly. Shock. Anger. Something that might have been fear. "If you go, don't bother coming back." The words hung in the air between us. I stared at her, trying to find some sign that she didn't mean it, but her eyes were hard, unyielding. "What?" "You heard me. Choose." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you seriously making me choose between you and Grandma?" My mother stood up too, matching my stance. "She's poison. She always has been." The words exploded out of me before I could stop them. "She's the only one who ever loved me." The room went silent. Dylan and Marissa exchanged glances. My mother's face turned a dangerous shade of red. I knew I'd crossed a line, said something that couldn't be unsaid. But it was the truth, raw and painful and undeniable. My mother's voice when she spoke was trembling with rage. The only one. Only one. I raised you. I fed you. I paid for your school. And this is how you repay me. By throwing it in my face. I tried to backtrack. I didn't mean it like that. But she was on a roll now, years of whatever anger she'd been holding on to finally spilling over. You're just like her. Ungrateful. Selfish. Dylan stood up, his face set in that expression he used in court. Zenobia, you've always been difficult. Marissa chimed in. We've tried to help you, but you push us away. I looked at them, really looked at them, and saw strangers. When did any of you help me? My mother's next words would echo in my mind for months to come. Every single day I let you stay in this family is help. Let me stay. What did that even mean? My mother's face twisted into something ugly, something I'd never seen before. You want the truth? Fine. And then she said it. You're a burden. You always have been. You drain this family. You drag us down. I've carried you for 29 years. Then louder, loud enough that I thought the neighbors might hear, You're a burden. Get out. Time stopped. I could hear the clock ticking on the mantel. I could hear the logs crackling in the fireplace. I could hear my own heartbeat loud and fast in my ears. I looked at my mother, at her face contorted with anger, or maybe relief, like she'd finally said what she'd wanted to say for years. I looked at Dylan, at Marissa. Neither of them said anything. Neither of them stood up to defend me. They just sat there, silent witnesses to my destruction. The thing about being called a burden is that it confirms every fear you've ever had about yourself. Every time you felt unwanted, every time you felt like you were too much or not enough, it all comes rushing back. And standing there in my mother's dining room with the Christmas tree lights blinking merrily and the smell of gingerbread cookies mixing with the stench of betrayal, I felt something inside me die. The part that had hoped. The part that had believed maybe, just maybe, things could get better. But something else was born in that moment too. A clarity. A decision. I stood up straighter, wiped the tears I didn't realize had fallen, and said one word. Okay. My mother blinked. What I said it again, stronger this time. Okay. I'll leave. I walked upstairs to the room I'd grown up in, the room that hadn't really been mine since I moved out at 18. I grabbed my bag and started shoving clothes into it. A few sweaters, jeans, my toothbrush from the bathroom, my phone charger. I looked around the room at the posters from high school still on the walls, at the participation ribbons from track meets, at the bookshelf full of books I'd loved. On my dresser was a photograph in a simple frame. It was me, my father, and Grandma Ruth at the park. I must have been 10. My father had his arm around me and I was laughing at something he'd said. Grandma Ruth was smiling at both of us. I picked up the photograph and put it in my bag. It was the only thing I wanted to take with me. When I came back downstairs, they were all still sitting at the table. My mother looked up. Don't expect me to call you. I won't. Dylan smirked. You'll come crawling back. You always do. I looked at him, at this man who was supposed to be my brother, and realized I'd never really known him at all. No, I won't. I walked to the front door. The Christmas wreath was still hanging there, bright red berries and green pine. It looked cheerful, inviting. It was a lie. I opened the door and cold air rushed in. It had started snowing, light flakes drifting down from a dark sky. I didn't have a heavy coat. I hadn't planned on leaving. But I walked out anyway, closing the door behind me with a soft click. The street was quiet. Most people were inside with their families, warm and safe. I started walking toward the bus stop, my thin jacket doing nothing against the cold. Each step felt surreal. Had that really just happened? Had my mother really told me to get out? Had I really just left? The streetlights cast yellow pools on the snowy sidewalk. Christmas lights blinked from houses I passed. Through windows I could see families, people laughing, children playing with new toys. Normal. Happy. Everything my family wasn't. The bus stop was 3 blocks away. By the time I got there, I was shivering. There was a small shelter, and I huddled inside, checking the schedule on the post. One more bus tonight. It would be here in 12 minutes. I sat on the cold bench and let myself cry. Not loud, dramatic sobs, just quiet tears running down my face, freezing on my cheeks. I thought about all the Christmases before this one. All the times I'd tried so hard to fit in, to be worthy of their love. All the times I'd failed without understanding why. The bus arrived exactly on time, its brakes hissing as it pulled up to the curb. The doors opened and I climbed aboard. The driver, an older man with kind eyes, looked at me with concern. "You okay, miss?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. I paid my fare and made my way to the back of the bus. There was only one other passenger, an elderly man asleep with his head against the window. I sat down and stared out at the snow, watching my mother's neighborhood disappear behind me. The bus ride to Grandma Ruth's house took 45 minutes. 45 minutes of watching the city turn into suburbs, suburbs turn into smaller neighborhoods. 45 minutes of replaying every word my mother had said. "You're a burden." The words looped in my mind like a broken record. Was I? Had I really been dragging them down all these years? Was everything I believed about myself wrong? We passed through downtown, all lit up for Christmas. The big tree in the square, the department store windows with their elaborate displays, couples walking hand in hand, normal people living normal lives, unaware that in the back of this bus, someone's world had just fallen apart. I pressed my forehead against the cold window and closed my eyes. What was I going to tell Grandma Ruth? How could I explain what had happened without breaking down completely? The bus finally reached my stop. I pulled the cord and the bus slowed. "Thank you," I told the driver as I got off. He gave me that concerned look again. "You sure you're okay? Where's your coat?" I just nodded and stepped out into the snow. The bus pulled away, its taillights disappearing down the street, and I was alone. Grandma Ruth's house was 3 blocks from the bus stop. 3 blocks through falling snow, my feet already numb in my inadequate shoes. But I could see it in the distance, a small house with yellow light glowing in the windows, like a beacon, like home. I walked faster, my breath coming out in white puffs. By the time I reached her front door, I was shaking so hard I could barely knock. The door opened almost immediately, and there she was. Grandma Ruth, tiny and silver-haired, her face lined with age but her eyes sharp and alert. When she saw me standing there, soaked from snow and tears, her expression shifted from surprise to concern in an instant. "Zenobia, sweet child, what happened?" She didn't wait for an answer. She just pulled me inside, wrapped me in her arms, and held me while I finally let myself break down. Come in. You're freezing." She led me to the living room, sat me down on the couch near the fireplace where logs were burning warm and bright. She disappeared for a moment and came back with a thick blanket that she draped around my shoulders. Then she went to the kitchen and I heard her moving around. When she returned, she had a mug of hot chocolate, the kind she made from scratch with real cocoa, and a hint of cinnamon. "Here, drink this. Warm yourself up." I wrapped my hands around the mug, letting the heat seep into my frozen fingers. Grandma Ruth sat down next to me, not pushing, not demanding answers. Just being there. Present. Finally, when I could speak without my voice shaking too much, I told her everything. The dinner, the gifts, the argument about visiting her, my mother's words. "You're a burden. Get out." Grandma Ruth listened to every word, her hand on mine, her face growing sadder and sadder. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed a deep, heavy sound. "I was afraid this would happen." I looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" She stood up slowly, her joints creaking the way old joints do, and walked to an antique cabinet in the corner. She opened it and pulled out a wooden box, small and worn with age. She brought it back to the couch and set it on her lap. "There's something you need to know. Something I should have told you years ago. My heart started beating faster. What Grandma Ruth opened the box. Inside were papers, legal documents, letters, photographs old and faded. She pulled out a thick envelope and handed it to me. "This is a copy of your father's will." I stared at it, not understanding. My father had been dead for 17 years. What did his will have to do with anything? Grandma Ruth's voice was gentle but firm. "Your father loved all 3 of you children very much. When he knew his job was dangerous, when he traveled a lot for work, he made sure to have everything in order, just in case. He set up trusts for all 3 of you, $200,000 each, to be given to you when you turned 30 to help you start your lives, buy houses, whatever you needed." I felt dizzy. $200,000. That was more money than I'd ever imagined having. But why had no one ever told me? Grandma Ruth continued. "Your father made me the trustee. He knew I'd make sure his wishes were honored. When Dylan turned 30, he received his share. So did Marissa. They used the money for their education, their careers. Your father would have been so proud." "But what about me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Grandma Ruth's eyes filled with tears. "That's where the problem started. When your father died, your mother wanted control of everything. She wanted to manage all the money, make all the decisions. But I refused. I told her the will was clear and I would honor your father's wishes." She was furious. She accused me of not trusting her, of trying to control her children. We had a terrible fight and she cut me off, forbade the children from seeing me. I remembered then. I'd been 12 when my father died. 13 when I stopped seeing Grandma Ruth for a while. My mother had said Grandma was sick, that she needed space. I'd believed her. But it had been a lie. When I finally saw Grandma again, it was because I'd insisted. I'd taken the bus on my own. My mother had been furious then too. "But the money," I said. "Dylan and Marissa got theirs." Grandma Ruth nodded. "Yes. When they turned 30, your mother brought them to me. She'd told them about the trust. They signed the papers, took the money. But with you, she did something different. She never told you it existed." The room spun. My mother had deliberately kept this from me. For what purpose? Grandma Ruth seemed to read my mind. "I think she wanted to keep you dependent on her. If you didn't know about the money, you'd never question anything. You'd keep trying to earn her love, to prove yourself worthy. You'd stay under her control." I felt sick. All those years. All those times I'd struggled to pay rent, to afford groceries. All those times I'd felt like a failure because I couldn't afford the things Dylan and Marissa had. And there was money waiting for me all along. Money my father had left me because he loved me. Grandma Ruth pulled out another envelope. This one was different. Older. Worn at the edges. "Your father wrote you a letter. He wrote one for each of his children to be given with the trust. I've been keeping it safe for you." My hands shook as I took it. The envelope had my name on it in my father's handwriting. "Zenobia. For when you turn 30. "I'm not 30 yet," I said. "Next month," Grandma Ruth replied. "But I think you need this now." I opened the envelope carefully, like it might disintegrate if I wasn't gentle. Inside was a letter, 2 pages filled with my father's neat script. I started reading, and the tears came immediately. "My dearest Zenobia," the letter began. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I'm so sorry I can't be there to see the amazing woman you've become. But I need you to know some things. You are my light. From the moment you were born, you filled my world with joy. Your kindness, your gentle heart, your love for others. These are the things that matter most in life. Don't let anyone make you feel small. Don't let anyone convince you that success is measured in money or status. The work you do helping others, loving others, that's the real measure of a life well lived." I had to stop reading because I couldn't see through my tears. Grandma Ruth handed me a tissue. "Take your time," she said softly. I wiped my eyes and kept reading. "Your siblings are ambitious, and that's good. But you, Zenobia, you have something they don't. You have compassion. You have patience. You have the ability to see people really see them and make them feel valued. Never lose that. Never let anyone convince you it's not enough. You are more than enough. You are everything." The letter went on. My father talked about his dreams for me, how he hoped I'd find work that fulfilled me, people who appreciated me, a life that brought me joy. He talked about the money he was leaving, how he hoped it would give me freedom to make choices without fear. And then, at the end, he wrote, "Love yourself as much as I love you. Be proud of who you are. And remember, kindness is never weakness. It's the greatest strength of all." I sat there holding my father's letter, crying so hard my whole body shook. Grandma Ruth put her arm around me and let me cry. When I finally calmed down enough to speak, I asked the question that had been building inside me. Why does Mom hate me so much? Grandma Ruth was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Your father loved you so much, Zenobia. More than anything. And your mother knew it. After he died, every time she looked at you, she saw him. And she couldn't handle it. So she pushed you away. It was such a simple explanation. And so devastating. I'd spent 17 years believing I was the problem, that I was defective somehow. But the truth was, my mother's pain had poisoned her love, and I'd paid the price." I looked at Grandma Ruth. "What do I do now?" She smiled, sad but proud. "You already did it, sweet child. You walked away. Now you start building the life your father wanted for you." She handed me a bank statement. "Your trust has been growing for 17 years. With interest and investments, it's now $350,000. It's yours. When you turn 30 next month, you can access it all. But even before that, I can help you. You don't have to go back to that house. You don't have to live under her shadow anymore." I felt something shift inside me. Not just sadness or anger. Something bigger. Understanding. Clarity. My mother had tried to keep me small. Keep me dependent. She'd hidden my father's love from me, hidden the future he'd tried to give me. But she'd failed. Because here I was, holding my father's letter, learning the truth. And I had a choice now. I could go back and beg for scraps of affection from people who didn't value me. Or I could honor my father's memory by building a life I was proud of. The choice was obvious. "I'm not going back," I said. Grandma Ruth squeezed my hand. "Good." I pulled out my phone. It was late, almost midnight. Christmas Day had begun. I dialed my mother's number. She answered on the third ring. "What?" I kept my voice steady. "I know about the money. I know what you did. But you—" There was silence on the other end. Then my mother's voice, tight and defensive. "You don't understand." But I did understand. Perfectly. "You made me feel worthless so I wouldn't ask questions. You stole my father's love from me because you couldn't handle your own grief. You turned Dylan and Marissa against me so you'd never have to face what you were doing. But it's over now. I know the truth. And I'm done." My mother started to speak, but I cut her off. "I'm done trying to earn love that should have been freely given. I'm done being your scapegoat. Don't contact me again." I hung up. My hands were shaking, but I felt lighter than I had in years. Grandma Ruth was smiling at me, pride shining in her eyes. "Your father would be so proud of you right now." I stayed with Grandma Ruth that night. We stayed up late talking about my father, about the past, about everything I'd missed. She told me stories I'd never heard. How my father had proposed to my mother under a tree in the park where that photograph was taken. How he'd been so excited when each of us was born. How he'd worried about providing for us, making sure we'd be okay if anything happened to him. "He was a good man," Grandma Ruth said. "And he loved you so much." Christmas morning we made breakfast together. Pancakes from scratch, bacon, fresh orange juice. We ate in her little kitchen, sunlight streaming through the windows. It was the most peaceful Christmas morning I could remember. My phone rang twice. Dylan first, then Marissa. I didn't answer. I was done with their version of family. Dylan left a voicemail. "Mom is upset. You need to apologize. I listened to it once, then deleted it. I called him back, but only to say what needed to be said. I'm not apologizing for finding out the truth. You knew about Dad's will. You knew Mom was keeping it from me. You let it happen. That makes you complicit. Dylan tried to argue. You're tearing this family apart. No, I said. It was already broken. I just stopped pretending it wasn't. I blocked his number. Marissa called an hour later. Her voicemail was similar. You're being dramatic. Mom loves you. This is all a misunderstanding. I called her back too. Did she tell you about Dad's will? About the money he left me that she hid for 17 years? Silence. Then, that's different. It's not, I said. And you know it. You both chose her over the truth. You chose her over me. I can't have people like that in my life anymore. I blocked her number too. Over the next few days, I stayed with Grandma Ruth. We cooked together, watched old movies, sorted through boxes of photographs. She showed me pictures of my father as a young man, as a teenager, as a child. He looks like you, she said, pointing to a photo of him at 20. Same eyes, same smile, same kind heart. I traced my finger over his face in the photo, wishing so badly that he was still here. But in a way he was. In the letter he'd left. In the trust he'd set up. In the love that Grandma Ruth carried for both of us. I started looking for apartments. Grandma Ruth helped me search online, and we found one within a week. It was small, a one-bedroom place about 2 miles from the elementary school where I taught. But it had big windows that let in lots of light. It had a little balcony where I could put plants. It was perfect. The landlord wanted first and last month's rent plus a security deposit. Grandma Ruth helped me access a portion of the trust early for that. She was still the trustee, and she had the authority to release funds for housing. By New Year's Day, I had keys to my own place. Moving in felt like starting over. I didn't have much furniture yet. Just a bed, a small table, 2 chairs. But it was mine. No one could tell me to leave. No one could make me feel like a burden in my own home. I hung the photograph of me, my father, and Grandma Ruth on the wall. It was the first thing I put up. Then I arranged my books on a shelf I'd found at a thrift store. My teaching supplies. My clothes. Everything had a place. On the first Sunday in January, I went back to work. My students ran up to me excited to share stories about their Christmas breaks. Miss Zenobia, I got a bike. Miss Zenobia, we went to my grandma's house. Miss Zenobia, did you have a good Christmas? I smiled at them, these beautiful, innocent children who had no idea how much they meant to me. I had the best Christmas ever, I told them, and I meant it. A few weeks into January, there was a new teacher at the school. His name was Aaron, and he taught 5th grade. We met in the teacher's lounge during lunch. He was friendly, easy to talk to. We started having coffee together sometimes, discussing lesson plans and swapping stories about our students. He never made me feel like teaching was a lesser profession. He talked about it the way I felt about it, like it mattered, like it was important. February came, and with it my 30th birthday. Grandma Ruth insisted on throwing a small party. Just a few people. Some colleagues from school. A couple of friends I'd reconnected with. Aaron came too. We had cake and laughed and told stories. No one mentioned my mother. No one asked about Dylan or Marissa. They were part of a past I was leaving behind. When everyone left, Grandma Ruth and I sat together in my little apartment. She handed me an envelope. Happy birthday, sweet child. Inside were the papers I needed to sign to access my full trust. $350,000. More money than I'd ever imagined. I could buy a house, go back to school, travel, do anything. But I already knew what I wanted to do. Keep teaching, keep living simply, keep being myself. The money wasn't about changing who I was. It was about having the freedom to be exactly who I wanted to be without fear. Spring arrived, and with it came a transformation I hadn't expected. I found myself smiling more, laughing more. I made friends with my neighbors. I joined a book club. I started running in the mornings before school. Small things that added up to a life I actually enjoyed living. Aaron and I grew closer. Nothing romantic yet, but a genuine friendship that felt solid and real. He met Grandma Ruth and they got along wonderfully. She told him stories about my father and he listened with real interest. "This is a good man," Grandma Ruth whispered to me one evening. "Your father would like him." In April, Grandma Ruth got sick. Just a cold, but at 85, even a cold was concerning. I took time off work to stay with her, making soup, reading to her, keeping her company. She recovered quickly, her stubbornness winning out over the virus. But those few days reminded me how precious time was, how important it was to spend it with people who truly loved you. One night, as I was getting ready to head back to my apartment, Grandma Ruth took my hand. "I'm so proud of you," she said. "Your father would be too. You've become exactly who you were meant to be." "Thank you for never giving up on me," I said. She shook her head. "You never needed saving, sweet child. You just needed to see what I always saw, that you were enough, that you were more than enough." It's been 6 months since that Christmas dinner. 6 months since my mother screamed at me to get out. 6 months since I took that bus ride through the snow to Grandma Ruth's house. I'm sitting in my apartment now, drinking tea, looking out my window at the trees blooming with spring flowers. Everything is green and new, and I feel the same way. Reborn, renewed. At first, after I left, the pain was overwhelming. I'd lie awake at night, replaying my mother's words. "You're a burden." The question haunted me. Had I really been dragging everyone down? But slowly, day by day, I started to see the truth. I wasn't the burden. The lie was the burden. The secret my mother kept, the control she needed to maintain, that was what weighed everyone down. Not me. Never me. I learned something important in these months. Your worth is not determined by other people's ability to see it. My mother couldn't love me the way I needed because she was trapped in her own pain, her own jealousy, her own inability to process grief. That's not my fault. That's not my failure. Dylan and Marissa chose to protect the family system rather than protect the truth. That's their burden to carry, not mine. I think about my father often. I reread his letter when I need strength. "You are my light," he wrote. "Never let anyone dim it." For so many years I let my mother's coldness dim that light. I let her convince me I was less than. But not anymore. Now I understand that my kindness, my compassion, my dedication to helping children learn these aren't weaknesses. They're my greatest strengths. They're what make me who I am. The money my father left me sits in the bank. I've used some of it to make my life more comfortable, but most of it remains untouched. Because the real gift wasn't the money. It was the message behind it. My father believed in me. He saw my potential. He wanted me to have freedom and choices. That belief that love means more than any dollar amount ever could. I don't hate my mother. I wish I could sometimes. Hate would be easier than this complicated mix of sadness and pity and relief. She's a woman who lost the love of her life and couldn't find her way back to herself. She took her pain out on the child who reminded her most of what she'd lost. That's tragic, but it's not my job to fix it. It's not my job to absorb her damage. I can feel compassion for her struggle while still protecting myself from her cruelty. Those two things can coexist. I've learned to forgive not because they deserve it, but because I deserve peace. Holding on to anger would just give them more power over my life. They've had enough. Now it's my turn. My turn to choose happiness. My turn to build a life that reflects my values, not theirs. My turn to surround myself with people who see me, who appreciate me, who love me without conditions. Grandma Ruth is my family. The colleagues who support me are my family. The students I teach are my family. Aaron, who brings me coffee and listens to my stories, he's becoming family too. Family isn't just blood. It's choice. It's commitment. It's showing up for each other day after day through good times and bad. By that definition, I have more family now than I ever did sitting at my mother's dinner table. That Christmas night when I stepped onto that bus, I thought I was running away. But I wasn't running from them. I was running toward myself, toward the life my father wanted me to have, toward the person I was always meant to be. Sometimes the people who should love you the most are the ones who teach you the hardest lesson. That you don't need their approval to be whole. That you are enough exactly as you are. I'm 30 now. I teach 23 children who think I hung the moon. I live in an apartment I chose decorated exactly how I like it. I have coffee with friends. I visit my grandmother every week. I wake up each morning and don't feel that knot of anxiety in my stomach wondering if today will be the day someone finally sees me. Because I see myself. And that's enough. If you're out there watching this feeling like a burden in your own family, I want you to know something. You're not. You never were. The people who make you feel that way are dealing with their own pain, their own issues, their own inability to love freely. That's about them, not about you. Your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. You are valuable. You are worthy. You are enough. The right people will see your light. They'll appreciate your kindness. They'll celebrate your successes and support you through your struggles. Those are the people you build a life with, not the ones who demand you shrink yourself to make them comfortable, not the ones who use your love as a weapon against you, the ones who see you, truly see you, and love what they see. So here's what I want to ask you. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Have you ever been made to feel like your dreams don't matter? Drop a comment below and share your story. You're not alone. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel for more real stories about finding strength in difficult situations. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Someone who's still sitting at that dinner table trying to earn love that should be freely given. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for seeing me. I hope my journey helps you find the courage to see yourself too, to value yourself, to choose yourself. You deserve a family that celebrates you. And if you don't have that by blood, create it by choice. Build the life you deserve. Your father, your grandmother. Whoever loved you truly, they'd want that for you. They'd want you to be free. Remember, kindness is never weakness. Compassion is never a burden. And you, exactly as you are right now, are more than enough. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Not your mother, not your siblings, not anyone. You are the light. Don't let them dim it. I wish you peace. I wish you love. I wish you the courage to walk away from tables where you're not fed, and the wisdom to find tables where you're celebrated. Happy holidays whenever you're watching this. And may your next chapter be filled with people who see your worth, because you deserve nothing less.